Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. I am here with Lisa Steinfeld, a person who is deaf and also a member of Temple and a vice president on our board of trustees. And she's joining me today to talk about her experience as a person who is deaf during this pandemic. But first, Lisa, how are you today?
I'm okay, and I want to say hello to everybody. Normally, we would be seeing you guys on Facebook and seeing your questions, but this is one of the problems of being deaf during the pandemic, is if we do that, there's a delay, and it would be hard for me to repeat. So if you have any questions, just type them, and I'll check them after the interview.
Great, thank you. So important. We were talking about this beforehand and realized that, as you mentioned, it would be really difficult to be watching me talk and paying attention to the comments. And I don't know about you, but I'm terrible at multitasking. So I agree with you. I think that would be challenging. But please, everyone who might be watching this, feel free to ask a question and we'll get back to you. That's great. Thank you. Lisa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I was born profoundly deaf, but I was not diagnosed until 13 months of age, which is pretty late considering, of course, now we have mandatory newborn screening, so hopefully we catch hearing loss right from birth. So once I was diagnosed, I started speech therapy every day and had that through high school. And I had a hearing aid in both ears, and I still have one digital hearing aid, and I got a cochlear implant as an adult in 2006. And my parents raised me to lip read and speak because they figured you can always learn sign language, but you can't always learn how to talk because there's a small developmental window. So I'm so grateful to them for making that decision.
So I think it's a misconception that people have that people who are deaf sign, right?
Not everybody who's deaf signs. I know very little sign.
And it seems like that divides the deaf community too. Sometimes you speak different languages of sorts. Yeah, interesting, because I always assumed that you could sign, and I know that you can't. And just a little personal note that I am amazed at how well you lip read. You once did an exercise that I participated in where you asked us to say words, but not vocalize them, not put sound to them, but just mouth them. And it all looked the same to me.
Yeah, so. I have fun doing that with my kids sometimes, especially when they were little. Like, you can try this at home. One word that people like to say is a word, instead of, you can say, I love you, without using your voice. And then you can say, I love French shoes. And it looks very similar. So you can try that at home. And then if you really want to trick somebody who thinks they can lip read, say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. That is something.
So how do you know that someone is saying, I love you, and not elephant's shoes?
Years and years of practice. I have to say, my hearing device is to help. But if I was not looking at you, it would sound more like gibberish. And I have to be lip reading and hearing to get something of it.
Yeah, and I remember you stressing that it's contextual.
Yes.
That you kind of figure out, like, if one of your kids were to say, I love you, you would know that was what they were saying and not something else, right? So interesting. You know, this pandemic has certainly challenged all of us in many ways. What are the challenges you faced during this time?
Yeah, the most obvious thing is the mask. Before when it started, it was a little easier to deal with because we were all supposed to stay at home, go outside and in public as little as possible. I remember doing a shopping run at the very beginning, but that was before the masks were required. My husband, who's hearing, has been doing a weekly shopping runs. Thank goodness, because if I had to go to the grocery store, and even now that we're in green, and I can go to appointments and stuff, it's very overwhelming because I'm cut off from the world. As good of a lip reader as I am, I can't read through masks. I have to see your lips.
Right.
So it's, and everybody assumes that everybody else can hear. So if I'm in public and someone says something to me, I don't know, they're gonna get annoyed with me. And I've heard so many stories from friends who can't avoid going out in public and have had really difficult experiences.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then also with everything being online, it's a mixed blessing because in a way it's more accessible to me because I can see it online, but there are issues with online as well.
Yeah. What are some of the issues with Zoom, which is the platform that we've all been using?
It's interesting. I've noticed that some people don't have as good quality internet or high speed internet, which affects the video quality, which affects the lip reading. Because if there's a delay or if it's blurry, then I'm out of luck. Some people, you have to think about the lighting, and if it's too bright, if you're in front of a window or if we have a lamp on you, that's just as bad as being in the dark sometimes. And if people are far away from the camera, and of course there's no captioning on Zoom right now, so it can be difficult. And if I'm in a group with multiple people, I don't know if you guys know Zoom as well, but there's speaker view and gallery view. And for me, speaker view is easier because I can just see the person who's speaking. But then if somebody else makes a noise, the camera shifts to the person, some other person. And so as a result, it's always easier if everybody mutes except for the person who's talking.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like there's a Zoom etiquette or an online etiquette that we just don't think about when we're not affected by it. And since I learned that from you, that just the slightest sound can make someone else pop into the speaker view, I've noticed that on calls that I've been on where it's a cough that does it, or even sometimes like a barking from a different room, or the smallest sound. So I think it's always good for all of us to mute ourselves when we're not speaking, since we can't talk all at once anyways on Zoom, since it doesn't accommodate that. I also think there's something about the background changing that affects you too.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yes, I know that people like to get creative with their backgrounds, and it is fun to see what they come up with. But if you're in a Zoom with a deaf person or somebody who's elderly, could have trouble hearing, please don't use the virtual background, because what if you've noticed, if you move, you can kind of disappear with the background. So your mouth might be there 1 second, and the next second it's like half missing. So
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed that too, where people kind of fade in and out, or their arms are kind of off screen somewhere. Yeah, no, that's a good point. What about other types of communication during this time? Has there been something that's been really helpful and useful, or other things that people have used that are very problematic that we might not even be aware of that are difficult for you to use?
So I know a lot of people have probably seen an article about that college student that came up with clear mass, and there's been many more since. It's a great idea and concept, but when you execute it, it's not so great because the clear panel, number one, has to be big enough to really see your lips, and also when you talk, you're gonna fog up the clear panel, which defeats the purpose. There are clear masks that have been manufactured by companies that have specifically worked on the fag issue. But of course, those are hard to get and not always reusable and all that stuff. So that's one thing I've been dealing with. Now that we're in green, we can do more things. I've been thinking about this more with my family. Um, like what was it, last week, I took my kid to Rita's and we had to wear masks and they actually resorted to finger spelling to have tell me what was happening. So there are crude methods like that. Also, there are speech to text apps that I've been looking into, which I've started using for Zoom meetings for those people that don't have the best internet quality or what have you. So um, some of them you have to pay for, some of them if you pay more money, you get a better subscription and better captioning. But there's a basic one that I'm trying, and I actually purchased a directional microphone that's going to attach to my phone. That if I'm out in public and it's not quiet, or I'm further away from a speaker, it'll hopefully make the app more accurate in transcribing what people are saying. So I'm gonna look kind of funny walking around with, my phone and this microphone, but the things I have to do to.
Yeah, I think that's great though, that option exists. And I know how hard captioning can be when you're dealing with words that the captioner is just guessing at, right? I think a couple of weeks ago, the captioning function in Facebook was on accidentally during a Shabbat service, and the words that the captions came up with, fortunately, none of them were, inappropriate words, but they were pretty funny because the caption wasn't at all in Hebrew. It was English sounds based on what was being heard. So I give you a lot of credit for being able to use that even peripherally, knowing how many mistakes there could very well be.
Right. I mean, I have so many years of experience with bad captions and lip reading, both of which are contextual. So I'm really good at making up the gaps. So if you ever type to me in an email or text and you make a mistake, you don't need to correct it. I can figure out what you're trying to say.
You can read all of the autocorrects that that make the rest of us laugh and feel very foolish. So just kind of thinking about this strange time and not knowing exactly when things are going to be 100% back to normal, whatever that normal may be. What are resources you're thinking about that you wish you had, if anything?
Yeah, the things I wish I had don't exist or would require a lot of money to make happen. Like if I had my own personal captioner, I wish that people would talk more about face shields instead of face masks, because I have heard that they could be safe if you get them that are long enough and go around your face enough. Then I feel like that benefits everybody because we all want to see our faces. We want to have that interaction, that human emotion. So I'm hoping that there'll be more research into that. And I would love to see more clear math that address the fag issue and make those more common so that the net is hard to get and everybody can use them.
Anything worry you going into the days and months ahead?
Well, one thing I am most worried about, and I know I'm not alone, all my other speaking deaf friends are in the same boat, and even deaf people that sign, if we end up with COVID-19 and we have to be hospitalized, we're going to be isolated because of it. And we're going to be cut off even more from communication. Like my hearing husband won't be able to come in and interpret. Everybody's going to have masks. They may not have clear masks. So, and that worries me a lot. And I know that keeps a lot of my friends up at night. So that's another reason why I'm being a little more conservative in general in terms of exposure.
Sure, sure. I mean, the risk is still very real for many of us, but it's complicated for you with the fact that care in the hospital is concerning in that way. Just you not being able to communicate fully with the staff there. Yeah, I could see how that could be challenging and how that makes even the process of trying to figure out this face shield, as you mentioned, even more pressing. So interesting. I'm sure that many of us have no idea about those things. They're not things that we are thinking about, but we should be thinking about them.
Right, and even today, earlier, I had a conversation with a friend who is deaf and she lives in California. She was actually pulled over by a police officer who was wearing a mask and who was not very accommodating. No, she was a white privileged person, and I'm sure Black people and even deaf Black people have way more difficult experiences. But she was telling me the whole story, and the police officer actually asked her daughter, her 6-year-old daughter, to interpret for her. But the daughter was very traumatized. It's a long story, but and actually I'm a writer, so I'm gonna write about it, hopefully. I feel like that's another thing people don't think about is police officers and healthcare providers and other people we deal with in the public. Like, they didn't realize that all of us know what they're saying.
Right, right. And she was fortunate her daughter was with her. I know that your own children have interpreted for you many times when a speaker is facing the wrong direction or speaking too quickly. And I know that there are many of us who have tried to help when we can to make it clearer what is going on around you. Yeah, wow. Well, I know you have written extensively about this and will continue to do so about challenges faced by the deaf community. Anything else you want us to know?
I think in general, just be patient with everybody because you never know what challenges they're facing. They might have a hearing loss, they might have some other issue, but and the other thing is don't assume that everybody can hear. If you talk to someone in a mask and they don't respond, maybe they didn't hear you. Maybe they can hear you, but maybe they didn't hear you.
It either could be true, give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Yes. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for spending this time with me. And we'll be sure to check and see if there were any questions asked or comments made. And thank you for giving us this really important information and sharing a bit of yourself with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. Have a great afternoon.
You too. Bye.